Okay, folks, we have a few people on the Zoom, and it's a little bit after 6:30, so we'll get started. We didn't expect a huge crowd tonight just because of the circumstances, and anybody can join late, so no problem with that. So thank you all for coming. This is our annual meeting for the Sheboygan County League of Women Voters. Second year now that we've met in July instead of May, but seems to be working out all right. So I've got a short, well, it's not that short because we did a lot in 2021. I've got a few slides that highlight some of the things we did. And, you know, we always like to say we're 100 years strong. Remember that, I guess, is it 101 now, but hard won, not done. And I want to point out this nice poster that was created by a friend of one of our former members, Nona Binding, and we've been using that. So onto the agenda tonight, we'll do a look back at last year. And as I said, despite the pandemic, we got a lot accomplished. In fact, on the way here, I started thinking through the slides and remembering things I forgot to put in. But we do want to get out at a reasonable time, so that's okay. We'll talk about voting. We have some ballots here, but you're also able to vote online. Then we're going to have an update from Melissa Prentice on the People's Maps Commission, and she's going to be zooming in, so we'll hear from her. Then we have a special message from First Lady Kathy Evers, so I think that'll be fun for everyone. So moving along then. Oh yeah, also if you need to communicate with the meeting, those of you who are here can simply raise your hand or whatever. If anybody is online, they can use the Zoom chat, which I will try to watch, but I'm not always real good at that. Or they can text me, and I've got my phone number there, 920-627-6641. And then there's a raise hand function and things like that. We're all pretty good with Zoom now. So on to some of the things that we accomplished this year. The first thing, this was back in maybe August, we started our League TV. And Lauren Hofflin, who's zoomed in here tonight, she did the interview, and she's done several interviews since then for League TV, but the first one was with State Senator Devin LeMahieu, and then we used that for our September meeting program also. But he talked about the bill that he had co-sponsored that created or allowed us to have a system where we can register to vote online. And of course, the League has been promoting that quite a bit and has used it very effectively.
So let's just do a round of applause for that.
And we were very pleased that Senator LeMahieu participated in that interview. And that's available on our website if anybody wants to go back and watch it again or see it for the first time. Then I want to mention that Melissa Prentice, who's one of our members, as I've said, and will be speaking later tonight, she was appointed to the People's Maps Commission in the state of Wisconsin. She represents the 6th Congressional District, which is, of course, the district we are in. And she's been a regular speaker for us, giving us updates on that as time goes by. But that was really nice to have that close connection to the People's Maps Commission. I can't say that's one of the League's achievements, but I thought it was important to note. Then we've also got some things to talk about for 2020 election. I think the high voter turnout in the county was obviously due to high interest, but also due to a lot of the work that we had done. And 92% of registered voters in Sheboygan County voted in November 2020. The number of unregistered voters is going down. I don't know what that is. Maeve or John Binder, someone else might know, but I know it's been going down. And then I also want to mention that the voter access group was still very active during the pandemic. They brought in a couple of grants. And then one of the other things that they did was put together this, what is it, kind of a outline of how absentee voting works. And this was posted on our website. It was shared with various organizations, and we saw it posted around the community too. And I want to apologize, we've got this bar up here. There's obviously a couple ways to share the screen. Oh. Hopefully that's not too distracting for anybody. Then just going on to some of the things we did throughout the year. In November, we had a guest speaker. It was Tricia Erpeldine from the Mental Health America in Sheboygan County, and she talked about resilience, coping skills, and building community in uncertain times. And it was a nice program, given some of the stress that the election season had created this year. This was a kind of a big deal for us. I would say this was the first time that I'm aware that this chapter collaborated with another group on a day of service for the Martin Luther King Day of Service. And we worked with the Sheboygan County Food Bank to generate donations of food and monetary donations. And in January, we had a guest speaker, Tom Wagner from Sheboygan County Government. He talked about government and services. This was, I think, a real accomplishment, and this was funded in part by the many donations we got, some grants we got. We had put out a mailer for the 2020 election, and then in early 2021, we put out a mailer on spring elections, the importance of spring elections, and how to where to cast your vote, things like that. And it was in multiple languages. Oh, and I should say, this was a EDDM mailing, every door direct mailing. I learned a lot about that stuff when we were working on this project. But the one we did in the fall, I think, was a slightly larger mailing. This one in the spring focused on certain zip codes and mail routes within those zip codes where turnout was especially low. Then the Environment Committee was actually pretty busy during the pandemic too. They started a book club. We had 2 installments, but it's a good start. So hopefully that will continue, the book club. Anybody has questions or suggestions about book club, come forward. Also in March, we had guest speaker Judge Natasha Torrey, who is also one of our members, and she talked about the court system. Oh, this was a big effort too. Spring elections, we had more League TV installments. We interviewed, almost all of the local candidates for office, and the interviews had quite a few viewers on our website. They were on YouTube, they were on our website, and we also had them on Vote 411 this year. So we interviewed candidates for school board, Sheboygan Area School Board, candidates for City of Sheboygan Mayor, candidates for the Appellate Court District Number 2, and well, this one's a little old. I should have deleted the coming soon, but we also interviewed the 2 candidates for District 2 in the City of Sheboygan. That was a big effort by a number of our members. A lot of work in a short amount of time. Another thing the Environmental Committee had was actually a movie as part of the book club. It was Kiss the Ground with a follow-up discussion. They also ran an Earth Day activity beach cleanup, and we had this posted on Facebook, and we collected a lot of bags of trash, and we had quite a few non-members come to help. So that was a very nice outreach project. And I'm going to give a round of applause for Amanda Groyle. I don't believe is on now, but she was our environment co-chair or chair. Then also in May, we had an update about what the State League has been doing. The executive director, Deborah Kronmiller, brought that for us. Also in May, we had guest speaker Jordan Ellenberg, who's a mathematician and a professor of mathematics at UW-Madison. He's really a mathematics rock star. He's really well known in that field. And he's written 3 books, or at least 3 books, which are down there on the bottom. And his talk was about how math corrodes democracy, but might still save it. It was a Badger Talks presentation. That is available online also. That was recorded, and you'll find it online. I can show you how to get there. So these last couple months, we've been doing a lot of work on Fair Maps, and there's a Fair Maps team comprised of several individuals in this room, and then also some others in the league. And so far, I think we've staffed maybe 15 tables. I'm not sure, but I know there will be at least 20 events we might have hit 20 already, Chris, I'm not sure. But I've lost count, but I know that we've mailed several hundreds of postcards. So the way this works is we set up tables like this. This one up here is one that John Binder set up outside the Plymouth Library. This one on the bottom is one that Chris and I had set up in Paradigm. So we've got some signage up to attract attention. We've got some examples of the gerrymandered maps, the 26th and 27th district in particular. We've got some talking points so that people understand what is the Fair Maps movement, why is it important. And then we have a bunch of postcards, and I happen to have some here. So if anybody has not yet sent a postcard, you can get one now, and we have stamps. So we've been providing postcards and stamps and labels, and this is what they look like. They're from the League, People Powered Fair Maps, because that's the League's initiative. And then write a very short message on the back. All it needs to say is, you know, have a nonpartisan commission draw the maps, something to that effect, and then place for the address and then stamped. And I know we've done several hundred. I'm going to say close to 300 now, 250, because you've probably done 200 yourself. Well, not that you filled out. That you were responsible for getting. Yes, Kristen has a really good method for getting that done. Then I also want to acknowledge the new and returning faces on our leadership team and our committees. And some of you I know are here online, some are not, and I may well have forgotten somebody, and I do apologize for that. But you know, Mary Liz Town stepped up to assist with the Voter Access Committee. Emily Verbensky has agreed to be our membership chair for the coming year. Emily. Joan Rogers is on the ballot for VP of Programming, and I'm sure that will be a unanimous victory. Kathleen Donovan has agreed to come back as a director. Melissa Prentice as a director. Vicki Hildebrandt stepped up to chair the Fair Maps team and get all those tables going and scheduled. And you know, the result was, like I say, several hundred postcards sent out to our representatives telling them that we want a fair mapping system. Amanda Groyle stepped up for the environment chair position. Deb Sable Williams, who I know is not here tonight, but she's been working with DEI. We haven't done a heck of a lot of things there yet, but Deb's decided to take on that role. We were looking for somebody to help with that, and she has agreed to do that. And then Hella Willis and Rebecca Few were both appointed to the board of the League of Women Voters Lake Michigan region. And Geraldine and Luann are still on the board, had been already and still are. But then Hella and Rebecca were new appointees this year. So I want to thank all of them. Then just a touch on voting again. You can vote by email. Many of you probably already have. We do have a few written ballots here. I didn't copy a lot of those because I figured people would be voting online. Candidate bios are online, or you can just contact anybody who's on the ballot. You're free to nominate or write in a candidate, just make sure that they agree to that. And we've got some the budget to be voted on. Cheryl Andrus can answer any questions on that. I don't know if you wanted to say anything in particular, Cheryl. And then we have some revisions to the bylaws to vote on. And again, the old bylaws, the substantive changes to the bylaws, and then I think a markup of the bylaws were all sent to people. And I do have a slide on essentially the gist of what was done with that. And then we have programming to vote on, and that should be done by July 29th. So I do have the slide on the budget. If Cheryl wanted to say a few words or has anyone has questions for her, please do.
And what we're trying to do in the budget, a group of us got together to work on it. Of course, went back and looked at what we've done this past year. Only this past year is just such an anomaly. Not only because of COVID, but many of the things that James has talked about, particularly the mailings, created a great amount of interest of people outside of our group. And we got donations, $500,000 at a time, which is why we were able to do the second mailing. We planned on the first one. But that generated, a lot of interest. So the budget, if you go back and try to look at it and see how we did as far as what we projected and what we did, it's way out. And so what we tried to do was take some of the information from the past and then make projections. And what I put on the right side was the assumptions that we made in order to come up with those numbers. So you'd have a little bit of an idea of how we arrived at those. For example, we think that we'll have at least 81 members at $75 and then 14 more, which are the family people. So it's an additional 35. And that's how we've gone down to it. And I hope you've had a chance to take a look at it. But basically, we went off of the last 3 years. Everyone has been different. So we, made a lot of moves and changes. And of course, moving into this year is going to be much different than last year also, because we only have 2 elections rather than 4. And that seems to be one of the big things that we spend money on. So if you have any questions, I'd love to answer them. I hope it's all self-explanatory by the way we presented it, because we knew it was going to be online and we wouldn't have many people who are here to ask questions. We'll, just have to go with what the information is. So, you have any questions? Otherwise, vote yes. I'm not supposed to say that, am I, Jane?
Do you think these postcards are effective?
Well, I guess we'll see. My thought is they are at least raising the issue among the voters. And I hate to say this, but I wouldn't be surprised if we're doing this again in 10 years. But I know I learned quite a bit by going through the exercise and having to, learn more specifically how the redistricting works. So, to me, there's value right there. But they will be, they're being sent to our representatives. Hopefully they count them and make note of what they say. I'm not sure what their obligations are in that respect, if they have to track that information and provide it or not.
But it's mostly raising consciousness on
Well,
voters.
the objective is to have our legislators get, a couple hundred of these and recognize that their constituents care about this issue.
So this is a statewide initiative.
The People Powered Fair Maps is a nationwide initiative that the league is running, and how different chapters approach that varies. We've chosen to run this postcard campaign. Some leagues are working on email campaigns, other methods of reaching their legislators.
I had an opportunity to sit in on the president's call today because the other thing. And this is one of the major comments that all the leagues made. And several of them, like us, have actual members on the Fair Maps Commission and the group that's working on it. And again, I think it was real obvious that they're all doing various things. Now, I didn't hear anybody else say they were doing the cards, but people are doing things, again, I think, to raise the awareness of how bad this really is. Because most people don't understand, they've heard gerrymandering and they know it probably isn't a good thing, but they don't understand until you've actually seen some of the maps, which is what we have at the tables. So.
I need to learn that the appellate court has restored the ability of the legislature to hire attorneys now. That was
that had
taken
been
away from them. They had to return the money, but the appellate court now has returned that opportunity to them.
Okay, I hadn't heard that.
I think that's supposed to stop.
Well, we can discuss that later over a drink, perhaps. So changes to the bylaws that you'll be voting on or have voted on. This is a very brief summary of what was done. I don't want to mislead people, but this is essentially what was achieved in the revisions. Is some ambiguity was cleaned up, addressed some typos inaccurate grammar or confusing grammar, acronyms and initials, those things were fixed to provide clarity. Some repetitive statements were removed, or redundant statements that were here and there throughout the bylaws were removed or consolidated into the most appropriate section of the bylaws. Some articles were revised to comply with the state league and changes that the LWV US have made, or recommendations they made, such as allowing people to have electronic meetings. And then we revised the description of the executive committee and some of the officers and officers' terms to better reflect our structure and how things work best for us. And Cheryl did a lot of work on those also. So if you have any questions, see her, and she may have.
Yeah, I put together just a brief description, which you should also, what the major changes were. So I'm sure you don't want to go through. I sort of ended up as a committee of one on the bylaws because nobody else wanted to do this. But we, we put together the changes. I know for some people it's easier to see it the way it will actually appear. Other people want to see where the changes are. So we got it out in those formats, and then also this description, which Jane has, limited more. But just again, trying to let you know what we've done. One of the main problems we found as we started to set up the board is that what the bylaws said just didn't work for us. Part of this, I think, is because a lot of these bylaw things are very old. It's been around a long time, and I'm sure some of the words that were in the model that we got that we should follow, have been there for 100 years. So we tried to make it so it was more tailored to what we're doing here. And all of the leagues have some variations in what they're doing. And we just found that too often we were having to actually go against the bylaws if we're going to do what we have to do. So that was the main thrust, and then all of these things that she talked about. The other thing I learned on the president's call today is every chapter is having the same problem we're having with leadership, not being able to get people to step up to do the leadership, the commitment that's longer than most people will do. And there were about 4 different types of leadership styles that other chapters are trying. And what we've done in the bylaws is what we think is going to work for us. Hopefully it will, but there's lots of things going on trying to make it so that it's more comfortable for people. And that's a lot of what this is about. We had it before, so it was so complicated we couldn't figure out what it said, really. We sat down. Luann Burton started this with me a couple of years ago, trying to make it so it's something readable, and unfortunately stepped down as president and went on a trip. But anyway, so this is it. And again, if you have any questions, please ask something.
This is not a question. For those of you who are listening online, I don't know if they can hear us, but it's Nate Quinn who's commenting. I just wanted to first of all say bravo on really taking the time to do this. And I think back to just 4 years ago when we first decided to reestablish a chapter here. And at that time, our local state was recognizing that all of a sudden there were like, 10 or 15 groups that all wanted to start up. And normally they had this very complex 17 steps that you had to go through to become, part of it. And we're like, no, you don't understand, we're ready now. We're ready to go. And so they initially kind of gave us the information, well, basically here are our bylaws. We looked at them and it was just like, and then we ended up looking at Madison. And they said, well, just really try to put something together so that we can authorize you so that you are legitimate within our organization. But she even said at the time, as time goes on, you're going to recognize how does your group work, and you'll have to make those changes over time. So since I was part of the first group where the bylaws, honestly, they were like 35 pages long. And it was just kind of like, we were trying to pick and choose what seemed to work, but we knew exactly that we'd finally come today. And even in the near future, tinkering it to make sure that we have rules that really govern this body well. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Cheryl. That was a big effort. We went through a section every month at the board meetings, and Cheryl did a lot of work with that. The next thing you want to look at on the ballots is voting on next year's program. Each year, members are asked for input on the key efforts, and that becomes our program. And we've got 5 items on the ballot. Then we also have emerging issues, which I guess that's one of the 5. But then other, or you can add an option, so you can feel free to write in your own ideas there. You may have noticed already that sometimes we'll start out with, say, 3 areas of focus, and depending on what goes on in the world, we might change and start spending a lot of time on something that was not in any of those areas, and that happens. So it's nice to have that flexibility. Yes, Cheryl?
Just a comment about the emerging issues. What we have found is that every year something pops up. I mean, fair maps, sort of just really came last time. But there are issues that come up during a year that we haven't anticipated. And that's what that category, emerging issues, was. Yeah.
Oh, and then we've got Melissa Prentice. So that's all about voting. Melissa Prentice is on the line, and she's going to give us an update again on what's going on with the People's Maps Commission, and maybe a little information on the mapping software. I'll leave that up to her, but I think you're able to, I'll make you a co-host there. So you should be able to share, Melissa. I'm going to stop sharing. Did you have anything to share? I guess I should have asked.
I do have some things to share, but first I'll just give a little intro here. So thanks again for having me back to talk about the People's Maps Commission. At the May meeting, I outlined the map drawing criteria that was developed and approved by the commission. That document is on the commission's website. I would encourage you to take a look at it if you haven't already. I feel like the criteria are excellent, and hope that they will be used this round and in further redistricting rounds in the future. I feel like using this criteria will result in fair maps every time, and the entire commission feels that way as well. We are in a bit of a holding pattern at this point in the process because we are waiting for that 2020 census data before we can really do much else. So in the meantime, we've been trying to hone our map drawing skills, collecting those community of interest maps and from the public, and utilizing the criteria that we created to kind of practice drawing maps with the existing ward data that we have, so that hopefully when the thinking is that when we get that census data, we'll be ready to just plug that information in and get our maps out really quickly. We know there's going to be a very tight turnaround time. So I've mentioned in the past that we are working with a consultant, Moon Duchin, out of the Metric Geometry and Gerrymandering group at Tufts University. And we are utilizing their tool, which is called Districtor. It's spelled district with an R at the end, .org. And it's a really excellent tool that pulls in sort of GIS map making data along with historic voting data, census data, wards, counties, all of those important political and geographic lines and boundaries. And it's really great because the public can use this tool as well to share their communities of interest or map making suggestions with us. What we'll do with that information is once we draw our maps using the criteria that we've outlined, we'll overlay the maps that we get from the public with that information, and kind of we'll get these sort of fuzzy edges around some of the boundaries, and we'll get an idea of things that we may have overlooked. Maybe there's a strong presence of communities of interest that does not want a county line split. So we would hone in on that and look a little more closely and adjust lines as needed based on those communities of interest. So It's really important to get that information from the public, to have as much public input into this process as possible. And let's see. So what I'm going to do is take just a little bit of time to walk through Districtor a bit with you, so you can see how it works. I think it's a pretty slick tool, and I think if you've ever used Google Maps, particularly Google Earth, you would be pretty comfortable with using it. It's very user-friendly. So the first thing I'm going to share with you is the latest report we received from Moon Duchin and her team on the maps that we have received from the public so far. So this will kind of maybe give you an idea of what I talk about with overlaying the public maps with our own. So this was at the beginning of July, we received this, and we had received at that point 137 maps from the public. As of today, we have 160. So they are steadily coming in. And what Moon and her group do for us is they give us these monthly reports that tell us about the submissions. So I'll scroll up a bit here so you can see we continue to get written comments from the public. So don't feel like that moment has passed either. If you still have comments you'd like to share with us, you definitely can. And then we've been receiving the maps as well. So we get this summary information. And then we can take a look here at the areas where we've received maps. So you can see that we've got a lot of them from the southern half of the state. And this gives you an idea of how many are coming from what areas and sort of what those maps are starting to look like. This information probably doesn't make a lot of sense right now, but as you overlay this with congressional districts, state assembly, and Senate districts, it starts to make more sense. So I'm going to see if I can share Districtor and show you how that looks. Okay. Okay. So this is the landing page when you go to this address, and again, that's district.r.org. There's some great training materials here. You can peruse that on your own. I'd also like to point out that they are still doing weekly training sessions for the public. You can sign on at any time. They're doing it in both English and Spanish. There's at least one a week. And you can do the initial workshop or the study hall. The study hall is great for, if say the league, for example, wanted to get a group of 5 or 6 people together to work on a community of interest map for Sheboygan, that would be a great way to do it. And you'll get a lot of hands-on help working through the process. So I highly recommend that. And again, this is all on the Districtor website. They update those training dates every month. And there's also, they include the slides from previous trainings, as well as sample information and other resources to help get you going. So when you get to the homepage, you can certainly look through some of this information to get you started and get you comfortable. The how to use is a great place to start, or you can just jump straight to the map and I'll give you an idea of how that works. So you can try drawing your own districts if you want to get a feel for how that works, or you can click on this draw communities. I will give you a sample of one of the exercises that we did as a commission. Was each one of us had to draw congressional districts, and then we shared and compared. So this is the map that I created, and what you can see here is that ideally we want to get to the deviation of 1%. I got pretty close, but not quite. And then what you can do is actually evaluate how well you're doing on contiguity, partisan balance, that sort of thing. So my partisan balance wasn't great, but again, this was a practice. So what you're able to do is evaluate your work and then tweak things, which is really cool. So if we're starting from scratch, what we can do is build out from existing wards. So we'll do assembly districts. And let's zoom into Sheboygan. And then in this section here where it says data layers, you can start overlaying some things to kind of give you a frame of reference for how it's going to work. So you can do election results if you want to see how that looks. You can show county boundaries. You can show municipalities, school districts, and you can turn all of that off too. So you can turn those things on and off as you're working through it just to see how it's looking. And then what you're going to do is you'll take your little brush here. And again, you can vary the size and the color of your brush. And I recommend zooming in quite a bit because that's when you're really going to see those ward level lines. And then you just kind of drag and highlight what you think the community of interest is for your area. Okay, so maybe it's school district lines, maybe it's municipal lines. And then if you want to change your color and add a different area, you can do that as well. Now, once your map looks the way you want it to, and you can always undo things, and again, as I said, you can layer all of these different political boundaries on it to see how you're shaking out with, okay, well, maybe I want to make sure I'm including all of the Plymouth School District in this community of interest here. And then you can hide that again. When you feel like it's ready to submit, or maybe you just want to save a draft and come back to it later, you'll go to the save function, and it's going to create a unique URL for your map. If you're going to submit this to the Maps Commission, do add some kind of name to it so we can identify it. You can say City of Sheboygan, Plymouth School District, something along those lines. And then what you would do is come to the Maps Commission website here to submit your map. And you would just paste that unique URL right into the submission. So it's pretty straightforward, I think. Is there any questions about this at this point? Let me stop sharing my screen for just a moment.
Is the idea to make one community of interest and submit that, or to do the entire state? Like you had on that example, like you said, Plymouth School District. So if that was the community you wanted, just that submitted by itself?
That would be totally fine. So, and I would say the same thing too about doing, submitting a map as a group versus as an individual. You can absolutely do both. And you can't submit too many maps. So if the idea with communities of interest is that we don't want to split them when we're creating Senate and legislative districts, assembly districts. So if we have created our maps based on census data and the higher ranking criteria within our map drawing criteria, and then we overlay these community of interest maps and say, oh, we have a lot of people who are saying don't split the Plymouth School District. We need to look at that section of the map again and rework the lines to accommodate that community of interest. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, another question here.
What are the chances that the commission's map will be accepted by the legislature and the governor?
I think 0. We are pretty well certain that this is going to go to court, that it will be litigated. So we know both that the governor is not going to approve the maps that the legislature draws, and we know that the legislature is not going to have any interest in the maps that we draw. So what we're hoping by doing this really transparent and thorough and fair process is that that is considered by the courts during litigation. So there is a possibility that given the tight time frame we're working in, with how late the census data is coming, how quickly these districts need to be redrawn for 2022 elections, that the courts will decide for expediency to just select one or the other sets of maps, either the legislatures or the maps commissions. And so we feel that by doing this, again, really transparent and fair process, that gives us a stronger standing to say these are the maps that we should go with.
And are you talking about the Supreme Court or which courts? Because I can tell you, our state Supreme Court right now is not gonna take our maps. Which
I
court?
didn't quite hear the question.
Just wondered which courts you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
The Supreme Court? The Wisconsin Supreme Court?
Yes.
Oh, boy.
I have a question.
Another question here?
The states, are there other states that did this process in working? Do you know, are they using the districtor? Are they having any successes that you know of so far in other states?
Others, okay. I think I got it. Are there other states that are using this tool and have they been successful?
Yeah.
So Moon Duchin's group, the metric, I always get the acronym wrong, the MGGG, they are very well regarded, and many states actually have worked with them to do redistricting. Most recently, Virginia, which until recently was second, or I should say we were second to Virginia as the most gerrymandered state. And now we're number one because Virginia has sorted their stuff out. Michigan as well. I believe they put a like a fair maps type of legislation through in 2018. They have used districtor as well. UC Berkeley also has a tool that's very well regarded, but there's 2 or 3 in the country that are widely used for this purpose, and districtor is one of them.
Another question.
In the past, when the issue has gone to the courts, I don't believe it's gone to the Supreme Court. Is there a reason that you believe that this time around it's likely to go to the Supreme Court?
Not particularly. This is the information that we're getting from the governor's office, the support that we get from the governor's office. This is what they're predicting. I don't have a good sense of it myself, exactly how it will play out. The chair of the Maps Commission is much more involved with that end of things than the rest of the commissioners are. I would, though, encourage you to tune in to some of our public meetings. They are posted to the People's Maps Commission website. We have one coming up the first week in August, I believe August 3rd. And those meetings are always open to the public. All of our working meetings meet public meeting guidelines. And that would be a great thing to tune into to get an idea of where the process is at this point, because it changes rapidly. The sort of political landscape and various litigation and what the legislature is going to do, because they, as you know, are not happy that the Maps Commission exists, and the sort of line from the legislature is that it's their constitutional obligation to do this, and they have, there's no requirement for them to listen to us at all. So that's going to be their angle in court for sure. How the Maps Commission side is going to be represented, I don't know. but that will be something that kind of develops in these coming weeks and months. So do tune into those public meetings.
Any other questions? Does anyone online have a question? Well, thank you, Melissa. That was very interesting.
Thank you.
Somebody told me I should have turned my screen around and it didn't hit me what she meant. Okay, well, we've got just a few more slides. So I'm going to share my screen again. And we'll move along. Oh, now we've got a special message from the First Lady. I can move that over and we'll let her speak. Oh, you know, I might make a change on how I'm sharing here because I noticed that bar across the top. Well, maybe that doesn't make it go away. Okay, so I'm going to stop and I'm going to change that again. I'm sorry. I'm going to play again. Definitely let me know if there's any issues with sound.
Hello, I am First Lady Kathy Evers. On behalf of Tony and myself, I am very pleased to join you to honor a member of our Plymouth hometown. The League of Women Voters Making Democracy Work Award honors the outstanding efforts of individuals who have improved their community through the advancement of democracy and civic engagement, and who have mobilized others to work with them to effect change. This year, the League of Women Voters of Sheboygan County recognizes League member John Binder with the 2021 Making Democracy Work Award. Several years ago, John began purchasing the list of registered voters in Plymouth and made it his personal mission to visit those who were not registered. He built these visits into his daily walks in neighborhoods, taking voter registration information and expressing the importance of using your vote as your voice. Due to his diligence, John has encouraged and facilitated voter registration for hundreds of people throughout the county. He is also a key contributor to the League's Voter Access Committee and an active member of the Fair Maps team. He provided the talking points to be used at the Fair Maps information tables, and he donated stamps for Fair Maps postcards. John arranged to set up a Fair Maps table at the Plymouth Library and at Mill Street Days. And just to make sure he got his point across, John purchased end gerrymandering signs and strategically placed them around Plymouth. John also has a passion for keeping voters engaged, informed, and confident about political issues. He writes weekly newsletters for 3 different organizations. All the local newspapers know the League's Democracy Award recipient because each gets a letter to the editor every month from John Binder. Like the governor, John is a retired teacher. He has worked to add civic education and voter registration in the Plymouth School District. He has also taken on numerous leadership roles. The League of Women Voters of Sheboygan County thanks John Binder for providing such a clear and strong example of how best to make democracy work in Sheboygan County. Congratulations, John, from your neighbors, friends, colleagues, and the League, and from the governor and me. We're all proud of you and are so grateful for your leadership.
Can I speak now? Can everybody hear me?
Hey, in fact, I can try to turn this around without knocking anything off. Maybe you can see more of us. There's a little crowd here. I see one person. There we go.
All right, well, thank you very much for the recognition. I really appreciate that. My wife and I moved here to Plymouth 14 years ago. And from the west central part of the state, we both grew up in Marshfield, and I was a teacher in the Greenwood school system, which is located just west of Marshfield. When I moved here, I always had a passion for being civically involved. Back in Greenwood, you know, I was a strong advocate for public education and also spent some time on the city council in Greenwood. So I had a nice foundation to continue the kind of works that I'm really interested in. And I do have a strong passion for getting people to vote, register to vote. And I know before we talked about how we've lowered the number of people that are not registered. We're down, when I first started here in the county, I think we're at about 27,000 people that were not registered to vote. Now we're down in the area of 16 to 17,000 people that are not registered. So it really has been reduced, and will hopefully continue to lower that number. So again, I appreciate that recognition. It motivates me to keep doing what I'm doing. In fact, tomorrow I'm at the Plymouth Farmers Market with our Fair Maps booth. This will be our 4th time in Plymouth with a booth, and we'll keep adding postcards to that number that we already have done. So again, I look forward to continuing to be civically involved and to hopefully get more people to vote. Thank you.
Okay, and the last thing I had actually was just a few slides of, oh, it's not working very well. I think we're going to stop that again. A few slides of John making democracy work. So these were taken, oh, not all this year, some throughout, I guess, the recent past. But so here's John giving public comments at one of EPA's air quality meetings. I wasn't at these, so if any of them are incorrect, John, you'll have to let me know. One of John's tables for showing people, I presume in Plymouth, it says City of Plymouth residents there, why it's important to vote. He's got, looks like somebody was giving out suckers, don't be a dum-dum. And then there's another one there. Let me fix this. Oh, Smarties. Oh. So here's another example of one of his tables. He's telling how many people are not, did not vote, and then asking, does that mean that we have a healthy democracy? Here's one of the Fair Maps tables. This is from Plymouth Mill Street Jays, and John was there all day from 9 to 3, I think it was. I was there for 2 hours. And I had a great time. I learned a lot watching John in action too. Here's John with some of his local and members of a local environmental action group in Plymouth, I think, believe it is. So he's not just with the League of Women Voters. And then here's John with some of his elected representatives at a listening session. Looks like he had something to say at that one. So just wanted to say congratulations and thank you, John. And that brings us to the end of our meeting. Just want to remind everybody again to keep sharing and posting and, you know, spread the news and talk with your friends and get the word out. So thank you all for coming.